Hi, everyone. We're just waiting for the rest of you all to trickle in. If you can just type in where you're from, that would be great. So we can just kind of sort of engage with you guys to kind of ask you more questions about where you're from. Hi, Hendrik from the Netherlands. Hopefully the weather isn't too bad there like it is here. Molly from Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. Nice. The one place in America I need to go to. Henrik from Denmark. Hiya. Sarah from Turkey. Marhaba as well. Nash from Glasgow. Nice to meet you. Mohammed from Palestine. Haroon from Canada. It's pretty early over there. And Esther from Budapest. I hope I pronounced your name right. And Philip from Kenya. Word from the Philippines. I know it's late over there right now, so thank you for joining us. Hi, Ian from the UK. Yeah, thanks for sharing your link, Ian. I'm currently having a look at it. If you can all share like your businesses as well and your startups, especially website links, I'll have to sort of click through and have a look. Just a few more of you trickling at the moment. Yeah, I think we're getting a rush of you, quite a few joining us now. So hi everyone, if you just want to type in where you're from, and we'll sort of flick through and sort of respond to you there. And if you can also type in your company emails, not emails, websites, that'd be fantastic as well. Right. I think it's a good time to start doing intros. So, oh, hi, Kelvin from Adapt.com and Emra from Suma Design. I'll definitely give you guys a look after this. So yeah, I'm Magoob. I'm your host for this evening, and I'd like to introduce our two guests for tonight. Omar Farouk, the co-founder and CEO of Glorify, and a full-time dad on top of that. And Mark Pearsons is the founder of Fuel Ventures, an award-winning digital entrepreneur, winning the Ernst & Young Emerging Entrepreneur of the Year award. Fuel Ventures, the VC fund that Mark founded, is one of the most active early stage investors in the UK, with over 100 investments made in startups and scale ups, with multiple successful exits, notably Content Cal, with Adobe purchasing it in 2001. It's safe to say Mark has like plenty of experience in the startups and scale ups at every stage in the process. At any time, if you guys have any questions during this webinar, please type them out in the chat and we'll be able to fill them at the end for the Q&A session. I'd like to hand it over to Omar to take it from here.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Excellent. All right, just making sure that, and can you guys see my screen? Just want to double check that before I get started.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Super delighted to have all of you guys at the event, this online webinar today. Really excited to be presenting the session today. We've got a really jam-packed session, of course, and plenty to go through. And for you guys to carve out a little portion of your day, considering we're edging towards the holidays. Plus, I know there's a lot of you guys most likely want to get back to your football. Just shows a lot about you guys. I want to congratulate you guys, in fact, for joining this webinar, for showing that enthusiasm. It just shows that you're extremely curious and you want to take your business and your product-led teams to the next level. And for that reason, you guys should be congratulated. This webinar is all about building a better product at 100x rate of delivery by becoming UI UX led. And this is highly important now more than ever. In fact, if you want to get ahead of your competitors, there's no better time than right now, both in the economic downturn and the fact that there's some nuances that you should be focusing on in terms of how other companies are falling behind. And this is very prevalent both in my experiences and the sentiment shared across the globe in the tech space. Tech companies are stuck building the old way, and we were there not too long ago. So a few yet powerful techniques are going to turn things over for you guys with your businesses and how you lead your teams from design to development, production, and of course that's going to affect your bottom line. If you can build with minimal resources at breakneck speed, you will of course surpass your competitors, and this is what we're going to be speaking about today. So guys, tune in, focus right up. It's really important. I'm going to be going pretty fast to get to the end of the session, and make sure that you do stay focused. So grab a drink, get cozy, and we'll get started. Get started straight away. Okay, first things first, agenda. So I'll be covering for the most part the product-led side. So how to essentially use our framework to build at 100x rate delivery. Now, 100x rate delivery, by the way, is not just a fluffy term or kind of number that we picked out of thin air. It literally is the rate of delivery we've been able to experience after fixing our UI/UX process ourselves as a SaaS company. And so this is where you guys, anyone using this framework, will be able to achieve the same results, if not close to it. But I'll be covering this topic, and at the end, you guys should be sticking around till the end, because we'll be sharing our framework for free, where you can utilize this in practice internally with your team. And so we'll be sharing that out for free at the end. So do stick around till the end. We're going to give you the whole context of how the framework actually works and how you can deliver it internally. And you'll also get practical steps in the form of a template that you can apply internally. And Mark Pearson will be covering how to prep your startup for VC funding in an economic downturn. And a lot of these the points that he'll mention will also be totally relevant for you guys, whether you're pursuing funding or not. It's more important than ever to utilize these methodologies to make your business more lean and more focus on your existing users or to get initial traction so you can succeed in the market. So whether or not you're pursuing funding, it's highly relevant for you. So do stick around till the end for that session. And then finally, we'll end with a Q&A. All right, so we've got a super valuable packed session today, hopefully within an hour. I'll try to keep it within an hour. And that's my promise to you guys. I promise by the end of this, you'll have the framework that you need to build at a much faster rate. So a little bit about myself. I've been privileged to be exposed to the right people in the right environment. And hence, that's where I've kind of gained a lot of experience in the tech space. I would say my curiosity and passion in tech has led me to achieve the following, which is I've built 4 SaaS products in the last 3 years. I've invested close to $200,000 on UI UX design alone, leading these product teams, and leading product teams for the past 6 years. In fact, I'm currently coaching 10 companies on their UI UX processes to optimize those things to improve the delivery. And something really relevant about myself is I'm building a design tool, Glorify.com, in fact, which Mark Pearson invested in very recently. Fuel Ventures led the round there. And why is this relevant? Because UI UX alone with a design tool is extremely the main. Firstly, it's extremely important, but it's also the main differentiator when you want to compete in the market. If you look at the design tool space, all the design tools have one market share through UI UX alone. Essentially, the output is still the same, but through UI UX nuances, they've been able to position themselves for different users, right? And it's also extremely behavioral. You know, users are accustomed to certain workflows, certain layouts, or where certain user patterns to access tools. And so those nuances are really important for myself and our product team to pay attention to when building the product. The UX is also extremely complex. In fact, on the technology side, it is rated as the more highest in complexity in terms of tech stack and also how the functionality works from both backend and front end. And because of those things, these things, building a design tool in the past 3 years has given me a lot of depth in terms of optimizing the UI UX process. But also it's important to point out that UI and UX, differentiating UI UX alone is nothing new. This has been done over and over again in the past multiple decades, in fact, right? So it's no new story. You've seen this with MailChimp and ConvertKit, email delivery platforms, where MailChimp has been primarily focused on businesses and ConvertKit primarily focused on the creators market, people that need to monetize their blog, or vloggers or content creators. You've seen this in interpersonal messaging platforms such as Discord and Slack. This is highly common, where you'll notice like the UI UX is very differentiated in the case of Discord, it's targeted towards communities, and Slack is targeted towards businesses, so team members can stay in contact with each other. You also notice the same pattern in the web building platforms, where Webflow, for example, is targeted towards a professional market. You'll notice that they target both coders and professional designers to use no-code web building tools to do the heavy lifting for them. And Wix, on the other side, will focus on delivering much more drag and drop, easy to use tools for the DIY market. So the important point to drive home here is that UI UX, differentiating UI UX alone has been done before, and it shows the importance of UI UX. You can actually get market share by and success and win alone with UI UX. The question that I want to pose today is UI UX underrated? And my argument today is that it is highly underrated. And the reasons being is because this field, UI UX, has evolved so much in just the last 2 years alone. In fact, it's evolved tenfold if you look at historically, and we're going to touch on that in a moment. But just in the last 3 years or 2 years, Figma's evolution and the features that they've been able to release and the kind of pivot in the market share in terms of the tools and the processes is really interesting to see how much it has evolved and how much has changed. And this has impacted how people are delivering products. And you'll notice this in a moment. But because of the gap of knowledge, this is why my belief is that UX is highly underrated. Do people value it? Do people know that it's important? Of course. And I won't take that away from any tech founder today. Everyone knows that UI UX is fundamental and a pillar in their business pipeline. But it's still underrated because they don't. The processes have not been transferred in terms of the latest knowledge, for example. So if I go look at the the UI UX, if you look at the pipeline of production, the UI UX workflow starts at the right at the beginning. And this is fundamental to every milestone in your business. So it impacts everything that you do afterwards, from your product development, the code that you finally ship to your end users. This also, of course, affects your product delivery. It affects your growth milestones. In fact, UI UX is the biggest bottleneck towards progress. If you don't optimize this process, it's going to be hugely impactful on your growth goals and growth targets. And one of the reasons that UI UX is underrated is going back to this problem of product leaders not being informed about an optimized process and the more modern process. This is where it starts, and people are kind of stuck in this older system where product leaders are not informed. They are really the problem. UI UX designers and creative directors are working in a bubble or a silo, to their own devices, in their subjective thought processes, and not really collaborating in that holistic environment. And it's for no fault of their own. You find that product builders and product leadership teams, they're kind of focused on growth goals, growth milestones, and things like that. And really, it's sort of the workflow is more of a handed request, just submitting, these are targets, these are our goals, and the designers deliver. The designers might have the knowledge of creating scalable design systems and robust prototyping, but they often cast aside as a pixel pusher, the person that just sort of makes things look pretty. And because of that culture, people seem to be stuck in older processes. Developers, of course, don't care. They just want to code, and they don't want to get involved in the nuances. And this experience is very prevalent. I've seen this over and over again, both working in startups, scale-ups, and enterprise companies. And it's just because of how fast UI UX has evolved. People have not been able to keep up, simply. I recently launched an Indie Hackers article on this topic. It was highly valued by the community. In fact, the co-founder of Indie Hackers liked the post, and it started getting bookmarked. It was seen as almost like a playbook for optimizing your UX process for both startups and scale-ups. And a lot of people shared the same sentiments I had about the fact that it's being underrated today. But what was really interesting is the opposing kind of view. And the opposing view was that people felt that people didn't need to optimize the UI UX process in the early stages. If you're bootstrapping or starting up a business from scratch, this is not as important as, let's say, just trying to get something out there. So in the name of getting something out there, people would kind of cut corners to get to fast track the design. And my argument here is there's this false sense of scrappiness, right? So this person here said he's a designer and doesn't agree with the idea of trying to, optimize UI UX because they have to iterate fast. And in the early days, you are scrappy and you're 1.01 scale without major iteration adjustments, right? Now, I totally disagree. What if you have the tools and the resources? And what if today UI UX design has evolved such that if you cut corners, you end up actually creating a downward spiral for yourself and not being able to progress as you wish you could, and especially not benchmark against your competitors, not at the same rate against your competitors who are very likely to be UI UX led or design led. And so this false sense of scrappiness is a huge major issue, and why I think leads back to UI UX being completely underrated industry wide. Now, what's changed? Just to dial deep into what actually has impacted, there used to be a sense of scrappiness and building things fast. What has changed? And it is what I said earlier, Figma has changed the industry. If you go back pre-2010, UI UX was more development led, right? And then Sketch came in 2010, which was the first pioneering tool in UI UX design. And they made a mark. They started to grow exponentially fast, but exclusively as a Mac OS application. So it kind of forced a lot of people to actually migrate from Windows to Mac OS just to use Sketch. In fact, there's designers are migrating exclusively for that. And this was a norm for quite a few years until Figma launched their cloud-based platform in 2016, Adobe soon after their cross-platform. But why is this important? Well, the fact that Sketch was Mac OS exclusive, Figma made it cloud-based, cross-platform, and also they made it a collaborative. So the first time in history, this phenomena of stakeholders being able to come in your Figma file and collaborate with you, comment, and participate in the design process. Designers for the first time were not left to their own devices. They were the process was highly collaborative. People can comment and chat. And, there's a seamless handoff process as well. So Figma really changed the industry and created an all-in-one tool where you can both design your product and create robust design systems and scale from there. And you can see how things have changed from 2016. Figma has really innovated in this industry. We're going to cover things like component variants, interactive components, and high fidelity prototyping, those features, how fundamental those features are, and how they've completely flipped the industry on its back. But before I do get into this, you can notice that Sketch has been dropping down. Of course, Adobe XD is going to be no more if you've heard of Figma's exit with Adobe. So that is irrelevant to today. But this is the future, guys, right? And leading into that, notice how this graph goes from red to green. And that's really important. Why? Because this shows how the MVP model changed because of Figma's release. Now, if you look at the MVP model of the evolution of MVP previously, go back pre-2016, you could launch a SaaS product that was just functional, and that would be a great MVP. And people would use it, people would buy it, and then you could start to kind of get some early traction and start to grow it from there. Going bottom up is extremely difficult because it's very likely you'll have to redesign your entire platform from scratch and sometimes even change the tech stack. It's very painful. The new model, as we went post 2016, edging towards 2018-19, the MVP model flipped. And this was a theory by Andrew Gargoyle, who is a SaaS expert in the onboarding space. The new MVP model that has evolved today is basically focusing on a key set of features that differentiates you in the market to make it functional, but also reliable, usable, and enjoyable. And what's really interesting is that both making it enjoyable, usable, and reliable has a huge impact on the UI, on UI UX. In fact, UI UX impacts these fundamental pillars. Without UI UX, you can't make it usable, enjoyable, and it also bleeds into the reliability. And so suddenly UI UX became fundamental in the scaling process for your MVP. Now, if you can imagine, scaling from here will be so much easier. If you have a strong base and your product is already functional at the MVP stage, and you're just simply adding features to it, it would be so much easier for you to grow and scale and push out features, right? And hit those roadmap milestones and your growth targets. This is something we experience ourselves, and this is has been a very painful process for us. We launched Glorify in 2019-20 with the older MVP model. It was functional and reliable, but this resulted in this, effectively is a poor design process, which created an impact on our development process. There was designs being shipped to the dev team with poor clarity, static screens, nothing was granular, nothing was connected, delayed roadmap, delayed growth targets. And what ended up happening is that as we started to scale and grow our product to the next level, we realized we started hitting a glass ceiling where we're trying to push to make it more usable. But because of this old MVP model, we realized that you eventually hit a glass ceiling. You realize, wait a minute, the tech stack doesn't work with this model that we're trying to grow to extend its features. And the design hasn't been systemized enough to actually scale into new features. We had to redesign an entire design system so that we can ship features a lot faster. Since redesigning our entire UI UX framework and sourcing it from a robust, scalable design system, making it crystal clear and documented, and then passing that to our dev team in a crystal clear dev process, making the dev process crystal clear, the roadmap has been on time, and the growth targets have been easily more forecasted. Building in this way is just much more scalable. And this is the new MVP model. If you're not pivoting to this new MVP model, then you will face a hard time kind of growing or scaling, especially in terms of product. And of course, your growth targets are definitely pegged to a lot of your product milestones, right? Now, I want you guys to take a quick experiment. Go to Product Hunt today and just look at the top 6 products in the leaderboard. You'll notice something similar between all of them. All of them have exceptionally well executed design, right? And sometimes, more often than not, you'll notice nowadays, you'll find one of the co-founding members is a UI UX designer that is basically taking the role of a CPO or chief product manager. And this is really interesting how the market has shifted, where, you know, designers are highly valued in the co-founder team now today. Oops, skip the slide. So the skippable has now also become unskippable. Now, previously, you'd be able to skip accessibility and cross-platform and things like that. These things are a must-have. Like, you have to launch your MVP with accessible design so that people who are colorblind can see and read your application, you know, and this is being empathetic to the user end. And you know, you need to make your platform cross-platform. It has to work on mobile. It has to work on desktop and iPad. It has to scale onto different window sizes on different screens. It's very vital to have the dark mode and light mode, to have that extension in terms of personalization. And why would you skip all of these things when Figma has made it super easy to execute? If you know the system behind it, you can execute it. And on top of all of this, there is a rise in global standards. Sorry, guys. Yeah, so there's a rise in global standards. You'll notice that our favorite platforms such as Gmail, Facebook, Spotify, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all of them have major facelifts in the last 3 years, raising the bar, raising our expectations worldwide in our digital connected community of human beings. Like, everyone uses these platforms, and it's safe to say that, you know, with using these platforms, of course, you know, this becomes the golden standard, right? If people are used to interacting with these platforms on a day-to-day basis, this will be the gold standard, and they want to see that same expectation translate on their other kind of user experiences. Now, important to note, a lot of these platforms, I'm sure you would agree with me, and I'd love to hear you guys in the comments, you know, answer this question. But a lot of these platforms were quite clunky, let's say 3 years back. Like, if you look at Facebook pre 2017 was pretty clunky. Even YouTube just had a facelift a month ago, 2 months ago. They released the latest version. Spotify, Gmail had a major design system update in I think about a year and a half ago. So why are these things happening? Why is this rise of global standards happening? Because of the evolution within the last 2 years alone, that Figma has been able to penetrate into the UI UX design market, making both designers accessible and the process better. Now, let's put this in context to figure out, okay, what's the destructive domino effect? Now, because the industry has evolved within the space of 2 years alone, a lot of companies are lagging behind, and we were one of those companies. And all it takes is to fix a few things to make things a bit better at your company. But first, you have to get context in terms of how things, you know, what a destructive domino effect looks like. And I want to know if you guys are experiencing this right now. So the destructive domino effect looks like this. You have pretty screens with minimal systemization. Designers go straight to knocking out pretty screens, and that's easy to do. You can find plenty of designers that can you know, create eye candy for you. It's not hard, but there's poor systemization during the process, right? And that's the first domino effect. The next domino that drops down is the iteration process gets way more painful with time because of poor design systemization, because of poor iteration, because of poor design systemization. You can't iterate at scale without spending weeks and months and days iterating with your designer. This is extremely painful. The design usage is not clear. So, you know, it's important to have design philosophy running through your entire design system. Like, why do you use a certain button color here? Why do you use a certain menu style over there on the right side or on the left? These things are fundamental UX practices, UX laws, if you like, that you have to create behind your product philosophy. And if you don't create this, you don't create as clear user patterns. So your users will be confused. You know, they want to, when a user enters your platform, you need to give them less than 3 seconds to figure out what they need to do next and take them through the processes. They shouldn't have to be handheld through every step, right? And so a more intuitive product is going to help with this, and design usage helps with this. And most companies don't have clear design usage. One day a button is black, another day it's purple. Static screens with little clarity. This is another painful point where a lot of designers don't focus on the granular picture. They can give you static high-level screens and saying, well, this is the dashboard and this is your homepage and this is this feature A, feature B, and that's easy again. But you are now forced as a product leader, if you're CEO, founder, a product owner, you know, creative director, you know, liaison with the dev team or the CTO, you'll have to explain this in a granular way through huge documentation that takes weeks to create. Iteration on the code level is inevitable. This will happen. If things are not clear from the beginning on the design side, then your dev team ends up spending weeks building things in the wrong way or just simply missing things out. And no one likes to change things once code is written. It's a downward spiral for sure. Settling in the name of getting something out there. You've run out of time, run out of money. You've already wrote your first version of your MVP, hoping that it's acceptable MVP, but you know how buggy and broken the experience is, and yet you have to get it out there because this was the culture of the 2010 to 2016 MVP model. Just get something out there and then get feedback and improve it. But what if you can put a stop to this and have a polished MVP from the beginning and delight your users instead? This leads to an uncertain future with an exhausted team. Your team revolves around your product, their energy, their positivity, their excitement, their rallying towards your vision. When you have an exhausted future, when you have an exhausted team and users are coming back with both positive and negative feedback, they'll start requesting features because they do have shiny object syndrome, no doubt. The thought of going through that hassle, I'm sure for any team member will be such a nightmare, anyone in your team, in fact. And this is where, you come to the end of the line, which is you can still progress with this model and it's fine. You can still hit different milestones, but you're essentially building a Frankenstein MVP. Before you can even wrangle your team together to the next milestone, you've burnt out, you've run out of cash. You start to question the purpose of your existence, quite frankly. And this is a painful experience that I encourage no one should ever have to go through. And if you just change and tweak your UI UX design process, everything will change to a completely different picture. And I want to share that picture with you via the productive domino effect of an effective UI UX process. This is the flip side. Instead of pretty screens with minimal design systemization, you now have a stage-based UI UX design workflow. What does that look like? I've got a little demonstration of how that looks. Sorry, let me try and get to my screen. Oh, there we go. So this is what the workflow looks like in a nutshell. You start with brainstorming, you create a backlog, you would have an exploration stage in a mid-fidelity exploration. You can iterate during this process, and it's less painful to iterate in the design stage, no doubt. And then finally, you can create your components and high-fidelity prototype. By the way, we're going to be giving you this workflow that you can build and use internally, so do stick around. This is part of our framework, but this is what the framework would look like. Exploration, polished screens, and high fidelity prototyping, right? Now, iteration gets more painful with time. This is what was previously experienced. But if you optimize this, you'll have a scalable components library, right? You have interactive static components like buttons, menus, input fields. Now might sound a bit technical, but let me show you what that looks like. With an optimized scalable components library, you essentially take all of the UI UX elements, like things like buttons and your fields and your icons, and you centralize them in a components library, highly organized, highly documented, so that dev teams are aligned. And you can add things as you build. So whenever your designer comes on and they have the new milestone, just go to your assets library and drag and drop. So let's say, for example, pick a button, for instance. Here's a button, I drag and drop it on Figma. I can instantly switch the icon on and off. I can switch between different styled buttons, ghost, outline. This is a much more scalable process without having to search for things and having to copy paste or design from scratch. These are some of the struggles that a lot of startups are undergoing. Things are loose, things are not connected, things are not documented. For example, your menu items, your navigations. Also, like, important to know that Figma recently released interactive components. What this means is that imagine your app has a certain button or menu style that is used over and over again. You can actually create the interaction on the component level, which means, for example, if I take this, let's say I pull this in here and I play this, you'll notice that this is actually clickable. It's tactile. It works. It functions like the real application. So these things should be prototyped on the components level. Design usage is not clear previously. People were confused, but now you have a clearly documented design system, which what I showed you earlier. It's, things are documented, the use case, why you use a button, where you use it, why is it used in that context. Those things are clear. So your design team are aligned and they use things in the proper places without having to ask you and having to bug the product-led leadership team over and over again. And so building this culture of documenting everything, covering design tokens, of course, fundamental, just tokenizing your components, like giving it a code so that front end teams are aligned. Tokenizing in this way is really vital, because what it does is that your team can identify specific spacing, properties, colors within your design system, but then you publish that to front end code and it's aligned there too. So tomorrow you want to change your background color, you simply say, hey, I want token QRN color primary 300 changes to this. Perfect. And it changes that scale across the entire platform, right? It's that easy. So tokenizing is highly valuable. We tokenize things on our foundations as well. Through the colors, we do accessibility tests, things like that, to make sure that things pass and they're tokenized from the beginning. Static screens with little clarity was a huge pain point, right? Nothing was clear previously, but now with an optimized process, you'll have a self-explanatory, realistic, tactile prototype. All screens are rigged together in an immersive tactile prototype. Dev teams are super clear on how it would work in real life. Now, I'd like to pose the question, if you're a founder or part of the product leadership team, imagine you got a prototype look like this. This is a Figma prototype. It's not a real application, but you can actually interact with this thing as if it was the real application. It's prototyped and interactable in that way, so much so I can type things on the keyboard in fields. I can open different menus. I can drag and drop items. I can add different text fields and literally feel that tactile immersive experience of what the product would be in real life. And this is a powerful experience. You know, dev teams are going to be 1,000% clear on what they need to build with this highly tactile prototype. Now, previously, when code was inevitable and code iteration was inevitable at the code stage, now you can test your product before you even write a line of code, right? Imagine how valuable that would be. So you can send the prototype to a sample user and you can run tests, you can gather feedback, you can easily iterate during the design process before you hand off to dev teams. And selling in the name of getting something out there was the biggest pain point. The kind of ethos of a bootstrapper or a startup is to just get something out there, right? We don't need to polish it. It's not about perfection in the beginning. And I certainly don't believe in perfection neither. But if the tools are available, why not polish it a little bit better, right? And you can launch a polished MVP with far less bugs. And polish doesn't mean just on the design level, because design systems allow you to change the design in the future at scale. You don't have to worry about that. If tomorrow you want to change the style of your buttons, you can do that. But what's important about a polished MVP is that the prototype is highly thought through. And with that clear UI/UX process and a high fidelity prototype that's delivered to your developers, your developers can build with 1,000% clarity. And this will reflect in their end product. It'll be far less buggy for sure. An uncertain future with an exhausted team was what we had before. Now you have an unstoppable team momentum. Your team is excited to see their hard work pay off with delighted users. They rally towards your vision with fierce passion. Again, going back to the alignment with product and team momentum, that's pivotal to your team's momentum. If you build a great product and users are delighted, it just delights your team. That's the end result. And that kind of feeds off itself. It becomes a self-fulfilling kind of cycle where you just keep you take on the next milestone, build the next version of your application or the next feature with the same passion that you had after you released your MVP. And that fierce passion keeps reinforcing itself with every release, right? And so who wouldn't want that? And it all started with your optimizing your UI/UX process. A scalable MVP, MRR grows slowly, yet sustainably. You can now forecast success, raise that 3 million seed round at a super valuation, right, Mark? And this is the story that we all want, right? So our framework, of course, and this is really important. So today you can take this framework with you and apply it in-house. There's a lot of nuances in how this framework actually works. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the framework, the way it works is the same document I shared with you earlier. You'll get access to this. So do get access to the link in the comment section. And in the comment section, you will see a link that you can sign up, and we'll deliver the framework with you within a week. You can apply these techniques in-house, and it'll truly optimize how you look at UI UX and optimize the pipeline, create that dev to design alignment, and also inform you as the founding team or product leadership team on to take part in the process and be aware of what the process looks like. Because all it takes, you don't have to know or be an expert in design, but you just have to know how the process works. And if you know how the process works, then you can manage it and you can overlook it, right? So this is what our workflow would look like. And we also have a Notion project board template, which will allow you to essentially create benchmarks and an output calculator, allowing you to predict accurate timelines for your UIX delivery so you can forecast business goals, right? I'll show you a little preview of what that looks like. So here's a little project board that we have for a project. And here you can see that there's a board where your UI UX designer will work with you to, if you have an in-house UI UX designer, they can go through this board, and you'd be encouraged to do a granular sort of a scoping of the entire platform, uncover all the UI UX details. And once you've uncovered granular scope, you create these task cards with all of the granular scope. This will amount to in your done list. It will amount to in your workflows under these sum of all, right? So as your designer actually completes tasks through this project board and they release things on the done list, eventually what ends up happening is that there's a calculator that tallies up with the formula, and based on the rate of completion of cards, we actually estimate how long will your ETA be to complete the entire project, right? Based on all the granular scope that you've added in the task section over here. So this is really important. This is really has been super pivotal for a lot of business owners, and we built this internally, right, on Notion directly. So the formula runs, and it tallies up the numbers, and you get the figures up here. We have two rate of completion rates. So we have the card completion rate, which is as your designer finishes each task, the task rate will tally up and you'll get a months left ETA to complete. So in this case, it's 1.2 months. And we also have a points completion rate. So each task card is given a scope based on the points, right? So you work with your designer to figure out, and a good designer that understands the framework will be able to scope it accurately, right? And there's a framework behind that as well, and we'll give you the onboarding content for that. But if you're able to scope out the project in a granular way and give it a point figure or metric, those numbers will then tally up to the top and actually reflect in the months left ETA in terms of points. What's really interesting about this particular project is that this is a real project, and you can notice that the months left ETA and the cards left ETA are pretty similar, 1.2 months to complete and 1.2 months here, pretty bang on. So you got two levels of safety to predict ETAs, both on points and cards, and they're pretty bang on, right? And so we'll give you the content on that to show you how it actually functions and how you can, get your team onboarded on this methodology. Highly, highly useful. And last but not least, sorry guys, just a bit of a technical error. Bear with me a second. Oh yeah, so sourcing and vetting designers. This is really important in the framework. You need to get the right designers. You either get two types of designers. You get pretty self-taught designers. There are abundance of them in Dribbble, but beware. It's a facade of beautiful screens without a scalable design system or UX principles. They just order takers and they just push pixels, right? Plenty of those guys around, but they're not going to help you succeed in terms of building a robust, scalable design system workflow. What's important is you get a self-led UI UX designer. So this is someone that has deep knowledge of UX principles, laws of UX. There's a science behind UX, right? They have deep knowledge of scalable design systems and high fidelity prototyping, and they're super cross-functional across your team. They can work with the CTO, the CEO, the project manager, and take in all of those thoughts and processes and dissect them, process them, and actually implement that feedback in a very strategic manner so that they can execute the design process well. You find these individuals if they've been educated through platforms like Memrise, UX Design Institute, or Figma, these are the places you want to go to source these designers. However, one thing I would say is that we also, if you guys want to skip this process, because there is a lot of vetting that needs to go through this, despite you sourcing designers from specific educational backgrounds. You might have a little bit of a struggle trying to find the right individuals, because there's still a little bit of boot camping that might be required. And we've optimized these processes. We've created a very robust process where we can actually get people on a call, boot camp them, run them a live test project, and really make sure and facilitate that they actually have the culture that you need to scale internally and apply this framework that we shared with you. And this service, what we call this service that I want to show you guys, is Together.design. It allows you to get access to designers with zero hiring hassle, top quality production. They're boot camp to execute high fidelity prototypes. They require zero hand holding, and you don't have to be overwhelmed by kind of micromanaging them. It's a fixed, affordable rate. It's UI UX, world-class UI UX designers for an affordable subscription, and we've got the whole kind of process built out to make it both 100% NDA binding, and as well as optimizing, having the project management workflow so that there's some leadership there to actually manage them. We do offer a 1-week trial with this platform, so you can sign up to directly to Together.design. There's a call booking system that you can book a call with our team, and you can get on the discovery call. We'll run through 3 things within the first week. We'll have stylescapes. We'll have 3 screen prototyping and a foundational design system. So essentially exploring your style of your platform, if it needs to be reimagined, and we'll also create a high fidelity prototype, something that's tactile, that you can feel and you can interact with. And then we'll also clean up your kind of foundational design system so that you can grow from there and scale at a fast pace. And then we'll present it to you guys. So that's what we cover in the free trial. If you're interested in that, then that's definitely available. I would encourage you to still download the framework, the free framework, because you can utilize it internally. I think this knowledge is very important to have. But for those guys who don't want to apply the framework internally by themselves, then we have this service available for you guys. So this is our process. And without further ado, I want to invite Mark Pearson, our special guest, to talk about how to be investable in economic downturn. So Mark Pearson, are you there, buddy?
Hey, thank you, Omar. Very good presentation. Even I enjoyed it. Thank you. I'm going to be quite quick. I'm going to get to the point. Anyone that's on the call that has any questions now or during my part of the presentation, please throw them in the Q&A section, because we'll definitely squeeze in some Q&A at the end. I'm just going to give you a very top level overview on my view and experience for you if you're interested in fundraising via angels, high net worths, and VCs to scale your business. But also I'll throw in some just common sense, just things that you should bring front of mind in an economy and a market like we have at the moment. There's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of volatility, there's a lot of concerns ahead. The words recession, high inflation, they are all tough things for most businesses, and you just need to be prepared for that. So I'm going to start at the very top and give you 1 or 2 minutes on my journey and experience, and then it will help you understand why I'm probably qualified to help answer some of these questions for you. So I've been an entrepreneur. I've been on the same or similar journey than you have. I've been going since a young age. I started off as a chef working for Gordon Ramsay and Claridge's. That was led on to me being a restaurateur at the age of 23, having my own restaurant and business. Then I turned digital, and this is where it gets exciting. I got excited by the internet. I got excited by business and online and the scalability of that. And I started my own online business in 2006. That was a price comparison business. I didn't take any external funding. I self-funded it and bootstrapped to start that business and journey. And the business went on to be relatively successful. It grew and grew and grew into multi-millions of revenue, expanded into 10 countries. And that put me personally in the position to be able to start being an investor in other people's businesses. I did that. I ended up selling my business in 2014, and then I set up Fuel Ventures. And Fuel Ventures in the last 6 years has become one of the most active early stage VCs in the UK ecosystem. We've made over 100 investments to date. We're really proud of what we do and the impact we have in the early stage space. So some of the bits of advice I'm going to tell you now are hopefully to excite you and polish you and just get the mindset ready for you to be successful if you want to go down the funding route. So the good news, the first good news is, with all the doom and gloom out there, you know, you read articles, I'm reading about large down rounds, big unicorns being slashed by half price and all of the above. The good news is there's a lot of venture capital money out there. There's a lot of VCs out there. There's a lot of investors, and there's a lot of dry powder. Dry powder is a lot of money in a lot of funds waiting to be deployed. The challenge is VCs, investors have been a lot more cautious. So they've continued to be cautious. I've still seen them being cautious up until now. I think Q1 and Q2 next year, I think they will be through the Christmas period and looking for new opportunities. So the window is now. It's a good time to go out. But VCs being cautious means they're being a lot more choosy. They're being a lot more selective. So you've just got to think about that, consider that, and take counter decisions and counter choices to try and give yourself the best chance. If you put VC investment in the scale of things, only single-digit percentage businesses actually go on to get venture capital funding. So it's not for everybody. It's not something you may want, you may succeed at, but it's certainly worth going down that route. And there's a number of things you can do, especially in the kind of economic market we have now, to improve your chances greatly. It boils down to some very, very simple things. So I was saying these things 2, 3, 4 years ago. So this is no different to where we are today in the market conditions we have. Most VCs look for 3 words, very simple: team, traction, technology. So if they're technology and digital investors, they're going to look at a team. That's you. If you're the founder, they're going to want to look at you. What are they going to want to see? Someone smart, someone that really understands their sector, their knowledge, expertise. They want to see someone super hardworking. They want to see someone ambitious. They want to see someone with tenacity. They want to see someone stand out from the crowd. This is why this design session today is fascinating, because that's probably the first thing. Remember, when you land in a VC's inbox or however you message them, they're going to see design is going to be the first. You know, they say you get the attention span for X amount of seconds. That's the point for you to pop and stand out. So all of the stuff we've just learned is very important. So team, if it's just you, I was a solo founder, it may just be you. So how do you build a team? It's a real chicken and egg situation. You may already have an established team, but you know, a VC is looking that you have the ability to scale, ability to build a great business, a great big global business potentially. So how do you put together that team? Sometimes how do you put together that team with little to no money? And there's the real chicken and egg. Now you've got to be creative here. You know, when you're putting together a pitch deck or a presentation, you might have no money in the bank. You might have an early stage concept of an idea, but a VC is very rarely going to invest into a single person with a concept and idea. They're going to want to see some element of team, experienced people. And you can go out there, you can have coffees, have online video calls, get to know people and think of what that team would look like. People might commit to your business, might commit to joining your idea and concept and venture way before you're even ready or funded. You can go on that journey together and, you know, commit to it. Once we get funding, we're coming together. And I think the VCs will buy into that as a stage if you're that pre-seed stage. Remember, at Fuel, we'll still invest in individuals in our pre-seed fund. So there's still an opportunity there. Don't think what I said write you off completely, but do remember they're looking for a team or someone or individuals who have the ability to pull together a world-class team, expertise, knowledge, experience in that sector you choose. Traction. This is really important. Most VCs at all different stages, most of them look for traction. Traction can mean many different things. It normally means customers. users, revenue, or a mixture of all of the above. You know, I've seen traction looking like a contract. You know, there's no product built, but someone's sold something to someone with a commitment. That's traction, it's progress. So whatever traction looks like for you, the more you have of it, the more things you can show, the more evidence you can show of interest in your business or progress made or success. That's going to give you much more chance to win the funding that you may go out to look for than others. And then technology, we're talking about product. We're talking about what have you got? What are you building? Have you started building it? Have you got an MVP in the market? Can people use it? How are you going to deliver it? Who's going to build it? All of the above. So think about that. Make sure it's the best it can be. The version you have today mightn't be perfection. I don't think anyone has perfection. It's always iterative, good, better, best, always trying to improve. But, you know, do think about them key things. Another important area is sector. So the choice of sector is very, very important right now. So, you know, B2C businesses, consumer businesses are having a pretty hard time. You know, if you look out the window and you see the economy, you see inflation, you know, there's a lot of challenges out there. You know, households have less spend to spend on consumer goods. And that means for the next maybe year or two, I'm not the expert, but for the next year or two at least, you're going to see consumer businesses struggle. Not all of them, but as a whole, they're not going to do as well as they have done in the previous couple of years. So VCs on the whole, not fully, that is not a given, but not on the whole are a little bit colder and not as confident on consumer businesses, whereas B2B, recurring revenues, something like this is really exciting. So, you know, pick a sector that could be maybe recession proof, maybe a bit more interesting for VCs. You know, VCs are medium long-term thinkers, but they're also going to think, how is this business going to do in the next year or two? So consider that when you go to it. One word I always use is your business a must-have or is it a nice-to-have? Now think about that. I always said this before the coronavirus pandemic. I always said, is it a must-have or a nice-to-have? And that hit really hard at home because some companies never lost any revenue because they were a must-have. They were integrated, their services were important, and all the nice-to-haves got cut and reduced and lost revenue. So think about your business and proposition. Does it tick that must-have box? Is it doing something fundamentally good? Is it solving a problem? Is it really needed? Is it integrated heavily? Is it saving the money? Whatever it may be. Now on to what I call good business. Just think like a healthy business person. Is your business a good business? Is it a healthy business? Think about return on investment. For every pound you spend, how much is coming out the other end? If it's less than a pound over a medium long term, that's probably not a good business. The aim of the business is to make money. So think about what just the fundamentals of what a good business is. Low burn rate, that's quite important, especially in this market. No one wants to see a business burning lots of money, the cash dwindling and constantly making losses. That's okay in venture capital. It's okay to invest to grow. But what we don't want is massive burns and quite very high risk businesses. You know, low customer acquisition cost is music to investors' ears, and, you know, high lifetime value is really important. So if you can get a healthy business, remember, I'm just talking common sense here, but think of what VCs will want to see. It's not alien, most of it's common sense. Some mistakes I see founders make when they're going on the VC process. It means you've got to kiss a lot of frogs. By that, I mean you've got to talk to a lot of investors. You're going to pitch again and again and again and again. Mostly it's 40, 50 investors. If you're going to be successful at raising, let's say, a Series A, a 3, 4, 5, 6 million pound round, you're going to have to kiss a lot of frogs. And during that, you can get tired. You can get lethargic. It can become rinse and repeat. You can get a bit bored. You can get frustrated. But what I've seen is founders start to get a little bit cocky, start to get a little bit short, start to get a little bit moody, a little bit snappy. And that is the ultimate. It's going to kill your process, because if anyone gets a sense of that or feels it, it's going to instantly make it a no for you. And you don't want those. You want more interested and all the way, look at a funnel, all the way to the end. The more yeses you get, the more term sheets you get, the more successful you're going to be in this space. Also, don't get cocky. Don't stupid or unrealistic when it comes to valuations. I always advise all my portfolio companies, don't set the valuation. Get the investor interested in your business first, then have the conversation separate, because they will help you set a price, how much you want to raise and how much the business needs to scale and grow. Will work out what the equity and what the valuation is. There's no quicker way to get lots of no's and wipe out that pipeline and funnel by just putting the price too high and going in really too cocky and just silly valuation. It will turn people off very quickly because they'll think you're unrealistic, especially in this market. A fair price, getting the investment your business needs is more important than getting lots of no's. And remember, it takes time to raise money. This isn't a quick overnight thing. It normally takes a month or two of proper planning, getting a data room ready, putting all the information in one place, getting your presentation ready, really thinking about it, planning your forecast, your model, and then reaching out to investors, then having initial conversations, then having second and third conversations, providing answers, meeting their team. It's probably a 2 to 3 month process. And that may be short, 2 to 3 months. It might be longer than that. And to get your funding, it might be month 4, month 5. You get a term sheet, then there's due diligence, then the cash comes in the bank. That can be a 4 to 6 months process. So it takes time. But for the right businesses, it can be really worth it, because if you get the right funding and deploy it properly, you can really go on and accelerate beyond your competitors. So 3 last points from me. This is for VC businesses or any other businesses. Keep it lean, bootstrap. Think every pound in your bank that you save and retain. Doesn't mean you don't grow, but just keep it lean. Don't overgrow. Don't hire too quickly, especially in a market like this. Grow slowly. To keep it lean, you can deliver great results on a really lean team. Cash buffer. The world is volatile. There's a lot of unexpected things going on. Make sure you have a cash buffer in the bank. Don't let it get too tight, because you can very quickly lose your business and things can happen very quickly. Think about the pandemic. How many businesses weren't prepared for that? Think about it. Just always keep a good, sensible buffer in the bank at all time. And then think about customer concentration. If you've got revenues and business, you might be able to control this, but think about it in the medium long term. If you're reliant on 1 or 2 customers and you get some bad news or you lose a customer, think of how that can impact you very, very rapidly. So try and diversify customers, different revenue sources, and all of the above. So that was a whirlwind view on how to focus and get the best chance of getting funding in this space, but also just normal, healthy fundamentals of running a business. Guys, do you want to open up the floor for Q&A now?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Mark and Omar, for giving us your time and giving us those great those presentations. Definitely a lot to take on board. I'm glad I was making notes for the both of you. So let's start off with questions. Before that, everyone, make sure that you sign up for the UX resources we're sharing out to everyone. The link's in the chat, so just make sure you click on that and follow through. If you've sent your LinkedIn already through, link through, you should see a message from me with that link. So okay, we'll start off with the Q&A. The first question is from Sarah. How often should businesses have a facelift, bearing in mind the global expectations? I think this can go to both of you. Mark, if you want to go first.
I didn't quite hear the question. Repeat it for me.
So this is from Sarah. How often should businesses have a facelift, bearing in mind the global situation?
Design angle, I'm sure. So I think when it feels right, don't do it too often, because it's a big project to get it right. Don't rush it. If you think it's needed, if you think it's really going to change the dial, if you can afford to put the effort into it, but it is really important. Sometimes it can be the thing that can win you business versus not. Omar's very much going to have a much more better answer than me. Omar?
No, I think, Mark, you pretty much nailed it on the head. It's just about making sense of it, right? Is it the right timing more than anything? And, is there going to be ROI? Can you predict ROI at the end of that journey? I think for me, it's more important, more from the visual aesthetic side, that I mean, this whole kind of webinar is focused on design systemization and high fidelity prototyping. If you're going to undergo a facelift, make sure that that's your focus, to make sure that you both systemize your base and your foundation so that colors are accounted for, components are accounted for. So you can then scale your product much more efficiently. If you do have a design system, the great news, like I said earlier, is that you can change aesthetics at scale. So if tomorrow you have a new rebrand, then it's okay. You can just switch the colors up very, very, very quickly with Figma's resources. So, I think the focus should be, a scalable design system if that's going to happen.
Fantastic. Thank you very much to the both of you. The next one is to you, Mark. Hi, Mark. What is the best way to send a pitch deck to Fuel Ventures and get any feedback? We tried recently and got no response. Any pointers will be appreciated. This is from Ajit.
Good, fair question. Thank you. We get a lot of submissions. So I told you earlier that it's a numbers game, right? So probably each month we get 500 submissions. And I think this year, I think we probably invested in maybe 62 businesses. So we can't invest in everything that moves. We do have a vigorous, fine process. I would say do submit via our web form online, fuel.ventures. You'll find the web form to submit. We do look at every single one of them. We have an auto response. We physically haven't got enough team to respond to everybody. So apologies for that. We do look at everyone and we'll reach out to you if it catches our attention. But also, we're not the only VC on the planet, right? So if I was you, put it in everyone's inbox and try your best, because it's a numbers game. What we might like, someone else might like. And, don't give up there. Honestly, don't give up there. Iterate and iterate. Keep on trying. You can also try other routes. Just because that's our web form, it doesn't mean you can't try and reach out to individuals. Use LinkedIn. If you've got their email, find their email. Use social media. Do what you want. It's better to get a no than not get in front of somebody. If you're really pestering somebody, they'll say, sorry, it's not for me. If you hear silence, you don't know if that's a no or not. So be persistent. There's no harm in that. And also don't be afraid to iterate. I've seen presentations or businesses that we didn't like at the beginning, and the founder persisted. They continued. Sometimes they changed and evolved, or proven the business. The business started to get traction. They submitted it 6 months, 9 months, 12 months later, and it was a very different proposition. And then we had the meeting. So never say never.
Fantastic. It sounds like a dating app is needed for investors and VC and startups.
There's a lot of swiping going on.
Yeah, I was going to say, if any entrepreneurs are here, have that for free. So this one
I want to extend that question if possible.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mark, how often is it? I mean, is it a better approach to have word of mouth applications, for example, so people that actually knows another business in the portfolio or knows yourself or a colleague or something?
Put it as like an expressway in, right? If someone we rate in our network, whether it's a founder that we've already invested in, whether it's someone we work closely with, whether it's another VC that we really respect, maybe they're an A-round VC and we're a seed VC. If someone like that sends us a presentation, and it's not, oh, I've been asked to send this. It's because they actually think it's good. Oh, I've seen this. It's good. Not for us, or we don't invest or whatever. But I think you should look at it. It's going to get extra attention. Doesn't mean it will succeed, but it's going to get extra eyeballs. And that's the key thing. Your big vision might be brilliant. Just because you don't get yeses, it doesn't mean the VCs are right. The VCs can be wrong a lot. So don't let that dismiss or stop you ever going and doing that business. Honestly, VCs can be wrong a lot. They've been wrong a lot. I've been wrong a lot. So, it's very, very hard to filter and choose what you think are going to be the winners. But yeah, persist via all routes. Be cheeky. There's until you've been told no, leave me alone. Keep pushing.
Makes sense. I guess there's a bit of a networking play there, which is good. Like you can use that to advantage, and I guess sometimes who could be helpful for sure. Magoob, any more questions on your side?
Yeah, so just some advice from Kelvin. He said we use Notion for our pitch decks and just share the same link so they can update it so everyone always has the latest versions. Thanks for the advice, Kelvin. From Sasha Visram, how much experienced experience, i.e., making sure you're seeing it through the user's eyes, and insight do you need to have before you release the new UX?
Can you repeat that question again, Magoo?
So, how much experience, so making it from the user's eyes, do you have to have before you release the new user experience of the app or service?
That's a good question. So, I mean, user experience or UX design is all it's always empathetic. It's always about the user. It's user centric. So, the process you should have is do tons of user research. So whenever we make a decision on a UX level, we're looking at all our competitors, successful competitors, people that have made it significantly, and they, don't try and reinvent the wheel. I've done this before, and it's really painful. If you over engineer things or you try to maybe too innovative, it actually can be your downfall. And we've suffered. We have many UX UI wins, but we've also had UX losses. And the reason those losses come into place because we try to be too smart or too innovative. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Improving the wheel is okay, but people borrow from each other all the time, from other competitors, other platforms. You wouldn't have a Figma today if it weren't for Sketch, for example, because they pioneered that kind of set of design tools. But Figma took so much from them, and they've become who they are today. So definitely borrow and try to have that mindset of improving the wheel. But yeah, definitely focus on your being empathetic towards the users. The best way to be empathetic is talk to them, speak to them, send what we like to do is use Maze tours. So maze.co, a great platform. You can actually create your high fidelity prototype on Figma, launch it on Maze, and Maze will send it, or you can send it with a link to a sample user base and get feedback. So you'll start to see heat maps and how they interacted with your platform before you decide to code it. So I highly recommend that if you want to test your product and make sure that the experience is really user driven before you start to code. It's very important to, be sure about what goes to the coding stage. You don't want to suffer iterating on the code level. Always try to iterate on the design level. And throughout that entire process, you want to be having a workflow of user research, sending a prototype to sample user base, getting that feedback, iterating, and repeat until you get it right and you're confident to release it into the dev stage.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to say iterating the dev stage is expensive. So I want to encourage you to encourage you against that. One question from Sasha. Hi, Mark. What is the optimal gross margin rate in early growth? I.e., is single digit too low?
I presume we're talking about a marketplace or some kind of platform business. It's funny. We've invested higher the better. Higher the better, right? More margin, more profit. But that isn't always possible in every business model. So we've invested in single digit percentage margin marketplaces or platforms. And it really then depends on scale. Remember, we want to invest. You probably want to a business that can scale. So if it's a small margin business, it needs to be able to scale very quickly and very far to equals a smaller business with higher margins. So there's no right and wrong answer. It really depends on the business and the sector. And it really depends on your ability to grow and scale that business. That's what we're really interested in. Market size and can you grow it? Margin, a bit more flexible. I've seen small margin businesses go on and be very successful, but if it's a niche with a small margin, then that's a difficult business. So just think about, is it broad? Can it really scale globally? And that's where the XXX0 multiple and size can come in.
Thank you very much. That's a great answer. I think this one would be for you, Omar, from Charlie Oliver. At what point in the design process is it the most important to be disciplined? Do you want to give your context as a designer, Omar, your background as well?
In what place? So the expertise the designer should have, especially a product-led designer. I'm assuming a UX-led designer, right?
I'm assuming since the topic is UX.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, for sure.
So at what point in the design process is it most important to be disciplined?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be disciplined throughout, for sure. I mean, if you're looking for specific skill sets within the process, they need to be self-led. I've gone through a very painful process hiring the wrong designers and eventually finding the right designers. I've been through a bit of a journey. One of the designers we hired in the past had a lot of leadership skills, but very poor execution skills, right? He can come up with amazing ideas and he would market them really well to the founding led team. But when it comes to actually sitting down and just doing the graft, like putting his head down and knocking out screens, he just couldn't do it. There's so many delays, and so we can't have the sort of one-hit wonders or these people that just speak on a high level but can't execute. And then so it's a balance of both being able to have that leadership but also being able to execute. On the other hand, we've recently hired designers that can literally put their head down and knock out screens for the entire week and over deliver their targets, which is amazing. And so it's just a balance of both leadership, being able to be visionary, have that kind of relationship with the co-founding team to absorb that vision and take that on themselves, and then execute it on the design process. For me, is really important in terms of discipline. But yeah, the discipline needs to reflect in the work process when it comes to actually putting pen to paper and actually knocking out screens. That's where it really starts to reflect, because anyone come up with high and mighty ideas. But I think both of these components are still really important. Like they should have that innovative mindset as well, and that kind of leadership skill too.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Another one from Matthew. I'm aware of time, so we'll have one more question after this one. In regards to the Reworks MVP model, what would you say to the argument that there is a huge amount of risk in developing what could be considered a non-critical UI/UX aspect before providing the core functional value proposition?
Yeah, so when it comes to the kind of evolved version of the MVP model, it actually facilitates and kind of avoids risk, because what you're essentially focusing on is a focused set of features. But because of the evolution of tools that are available to you, you can now also make it functional, usable, and enjoyable, right? And so you don't have to skip those steps, where in the past, the tools weren't available to reach those milestones from the beginning. Not only that, but from the beginning, you can make it scalable through a design system. So as long as you start with a design system, and it's not hard, it's not tedious. If you get the right designer, they can lay the grounds for you with, foundational design system with their colors, typography components, your button components, all those kind of basic elements, and grow from there. As long as you know someone that understands scalable design systems, it'll take them a week to set the foundations. We take certainly a week just to set a basic foundation of design systems, to then grow from there. And then once you have your foundations ready, you can just keep scaling on top of that, right? And that becomes your MVP. But you don't have to, and in the future, if your MVP evolves and let's say you change your entire aesthetic, that's okay, because you can do it on the design system level and it changes at scale. So the new MVP model is ready to be executed because of the tools that are available, and you don't have to cut corners in design anymore.
Awesome, thank you. And one last question from Kelvin, possibly the most important one for tonight. Omar, being a design expert, what is better for conversions, using photos of people or illustrations of people on your website?
I think that's too subjective. It really depends on the market, the tool, the platform. I think split test, the old technique that I think everyone knows about, just A/B test, right? Send one to your sampled user base and see how they react to it. One thing we do as internally, we've found useful, and this is a commonly practiced exercise that a lot of successful companies are utilized, is just do a kind of ideal customer profile exercise, brand exercise or brand workshop. Probably takes about half a day to accomplish. I recommend Core, which is Jose Caballero. Maybe Jose Caballero, I invited him to this webinar. He leads Core, which is a phenomenal branding product that is being used by a lot of Fortune 5 companies and enterprise. It's a framework essentially you can take internally and execute a brand workshop to figure out who is your ideal customer profile. And based on that research, you'll know what to put on your landing page most often than not. So for example, like we have good conversion on our website because we did this framework. So, signups is not a problem for us on our landing page. So I do definitely recommend doing the Core exercise. So look for it. It's called the Core framework. I think it's hosted on the Futures website, thefuture.com. That's without a E at the end. Magoob, the website. If you can drop that link down, utilize that framework. I think it'd be pretty useful for you to figure out those, what design language to execute.
Okay, awesome.
One last thing, sorry, Magoo, but if you don't, sometimes if you're not a practitioner in core, then you won't be able to maybe execute it by yourself without a creative director in house. So then there's a lot of people that actually have learned the core framework to actually execute it for you. So you can find someone that, has that specification or that skill set or is certified.
Thank you, Omar. I put that link in the chat, everyone. But yeah, that's all the questions that we have, and that's all we have time for. So I'd like to say thank you to Mark and Omar for joining us and giving us their time. And one last thing, make sure you follow that link that I posted before to get your free UX framework that we're sending out at the end of the week to everyone. But yeah, again, thank you all for joining us, and thank you for attending. All right, that's everything. All right, thank you very much, everyone. All right,
thanks a lot, guys. Bye.
Thank you.